Hi crafty monkeys, it's Janet Clare, and we're going to be turning a 12-inch quilt block into a lovely placemat. And I've chosen the schoolhouse block because I think it's so sweet. And we have added some big stitch quilting details, little knives and forks. Good fun. So you'll practice your piecing and you'll practice how to bag out, and you will learn or practice how to do your big stitch quilting to add detail. And we will also of course be practicing slip stitching the opening closed, and you will be able to make beautiful table decorations or Christmas gifts, and you will have a lot of fun in the process. So watch the tutorials and I hope you enjoy it. So your finished 12-inch block. Now I'm going to do it with my schoolhouse because I think it'll look really cute, but any 12-inch block will fit for this, or indeed any block. Just rejuggle the maths, you can do the maths. But I've got my 12-inch finished house block, and then I have two pieces of the same background fabric, and they are 2.5 inches by 12.5 inches, and they are going to sit either side of our house. So you're going to sew those pretty sides together, press well, and don't forget to sew with the most difficult seam uppermost, and then you can really see it and manage all those seams as you're going along. So the first thing you're going to do is to sew those seams, and you're going to need the backing fabric, which is 12.5 by 16.5 inches. And then some wadding. Now this is low loft wadding, and all that means is that it's thin, because I want a nice thin placemat. But you could use felt, you could use a bit of blanket, you could use whatever you want. I've got mine a couple of inches bigger, so it's about 14.5 by 18.5, something like that. But as you can see, I didn't really measure it. It's just a rough. And don't forget to print out your knife and fork template, but we will discuss that later. First of all, to the sewing machine, sew your side strips on. Okay, I've got my templates. Yours will be smarter than mine. Mine's the original, obviously. And now I'm literally just going to trace it. So this is the side you put the knife. So you can measure this as much as you like. I like to use my thumb. It's about 1 inch. Position the template how you like it, and then I've chosen to mark up with a water erasable marker. It gives you a really bright clear turquoise line, which isn't particularly attractive, but we're here for ease of seeing and sewing. And we're going to mark up now. If you've got a water erasable one, it must not get hot. I can't iron this now. So if you're using a heat erasing one, make sure you read the instructions for whatever marker you're using. You could also use a pencil, but it needs to be a very faint line because I'm never convinced that pencil washes out too well. So I've got my paper template, and I'm literally just going to trace. And we're going to do some really big stitch quilting. Which is fun. So you're going to be stitching a running line, a broken line. So your line accuracy doesn't have to be great, because it's just going to give you the texture of a knife and fork there. So you can use a ruler for the straight bits if you want. I'm sort of getting as okay as I can, and I can straighten things out when I'm sewing. And then of course I'm going to do the same with the fork on the other side, and again make sure it's about 1 inch up, get it straight. Okay, so mark up your the side panels where your knife and fork are going to go. I'll see you when you've done that. Right, I've just put the house block on the wadding. I've left the backing to one side. We're not doing proper quilting. We're not layering up. Don't worry about that. We're just doing some decorative stitches here for a bit of fun, for a knife and fork. Now we do need to keep these two layers together. So you could do it old school way, needle and thread, tacking stitches. You could do it with your pins, or you could use these curved quilters safety pins, which are quite handy. It's entirely up to you, whatever you've got. You don't need to go out and buy anything, especially just use what you've got. And you just pin from the center, and it's just to keep everything, you know, secure, not moving too much. And they say a hand width apart, no more than a hand width apart. So old habits die hard. And just take your time, which takes longer and it's harder on camera, I've discovered. So as I say, we're just keeping our layers together so that our hand stitching is going to be where we need it on the thing. And while I'm doing this, I'll tell you what you need next. So you need some embroidery silk or some sewing thread, anything that you want really that you can do. But the beauty of the embroidery silk is that it does encourage you to do the bigger stitching, which is the sort of look I was hoping for. And I've chosen a red and a cream colour. You can choose any colour you like, obviously. And a needle with the hole is big enough to, might annoy me there, that the hole is big enough to get the thread through. We're just going to use a couple of strands of embroidery silk. Okay, so you can see I'm doing this very quickly. You take your time and make a nice neat job of it. Okay, so that's just pinned all the way through. And then we're going to take, I'm going to do red stitching. I'm just going to take, you shouldn't take more than your forearm length because it just gets tangled up. Okay, and then you just, it's got 6 strands as you know, just pick 2 that are next to each other and pull. Take your time, because all it wants to do is twist up into a big knot. There you go. 2 strands, thread those up. Move the needle, not the thread. There you go, we're in. I'm just going to put a knot in the end of this because it's all hidden inside. That's why we're not putting the backing on. It's all completely hidden. So again, I'm calling this big stitch quilting because we're going through wadding, but it's not really proper quilting. So don't think I've taught you how to quilt because I certainly haven't. And we're just going to start here. I'm going to pull up from the back and we're going to do stitch and a gap about the same length as the stitch, and a stitch and a gap and a stitch and a gap. Load that needle up and just pull it through. Now you want a little bit of tension on the thread because you are going for a texture. Stitch and a gap and a stitch and a gap. This shouldn't take you too long. Okay, so you're going to carry on like that all the way round. And then what we also need to do is we don't want this wadding to be completely loose all the way through and only secured where the knife and fork are. So with my cream colour, I'm also going to do a few little big stitches round a few areas just to keep everything in place. But you add as much detail or otherwise as you like. And if you don't like hand stitching or it hurts your fingers or whatever, there's no reason why you couldn't machine stitch that. You could do a zigzag stitch. You could do whatever you like. You make that placemat your own. It's always nice to do a bit of hand stitching. I hope you enjoyed it like I did. So I've got my running stitch, knives and forks, and I've just done a few little bits in cream just to hold various other parts of our placemat on the wadding so it doesn't shift around too much. And I've also removed my washable marker lines now as well, so you've got to do that. And now our next job is to trim away this excess wadding. Okay, you could do it with your scissors, but it's super quick to do it with a rotary cutter. So I am not too hung up about being precisely accurate. If you are, you do your measuring and you do a fantastic job of it. Straight enough is good enough for me, I'm afraid. So we're going for the straight enough approach. See, it does move around a bit. See where you've got to stretch it a bit. So let's just get that straight enough. And just trim it away, and obviously do that on all 4 sides. And there you go, all 4 sides. And then when it's trimmed, we will be back at the sewing machine adding the backing. Okay, so I'll leave you to get on with that. Trim to size now. Trimmed up now, and I've got my backing fabric, and we are just going to be bagging this placemat out. It's the quickest, easiest way of doing things. I'm just putting pretty sides together, okay, and then we're just going to pin in place, and we'll sew all around that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance as normal, but we will leave a nice big opening. Now, when I've been pinning like this is how I normally pin when I'm sewing. Take the pins out when I get to them. On the area that I want to leave the opening, so I'll put it down here, I will pin differently so that I remember that that's to be left open. Okay. And you just know, you just need, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches, something like that. You're going to hand sew that closed. So if you like hand sewing, it doesn't matter how big the hole is. And if you hate hand sewing, you're going to want to have as small a hole as you can get away with. But all we're going to do, pin pretty sides together, and then we're back at the sewing machine. Okay. So pin all the way around, and we're nearly finished. You can start your stitching at one of the ends of the opening that we're going to leave, and you're going to need about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just check that you're actually on the wadding as well, or maybe you sew more accurately than me, and you can, you know you are. And I've also increased my stitch length. Normally sew at about 2.5, and I've just increased it to nearly 3, so that I know the machine's happy with the quilting. Okay, so just 1/4 inch-ish. She says you got to watch your pins don't get in the way. Here we go, and I am going to sort of secure this with a couple of back stitches just to be sure. Whiz through, and then we're going to, when we get to a corner, we're going to stop about 1/4 inch away, leave the needle in and turn, and you can see I'm not quite close enough, so I'm going to do another stitch, which may be too close. You know how these things go. There you go. And just try and keep all your layers nice and secure and everything. The backing will be a bit loose, and we'll be able to iron it and it will look lovely, but you don't want it to be you know, misaligned or floppy in one place and not enough in another. So just go slow and steady all the way around. Okay, so now we're done. You can trim away excess at the corners. Just keep it, particularly the wadding, you don't really want bulky corners. Okay, trim them away. Do the same up here. Just trim some of that wadding away. Just doesn't make it neat as you can. Okay, it's only a placemat, so can't really go wrong. You can see some of my seams are straighter than others. There we go. Trimmed all the corners away. And now we're going to turn this right side out and take a needle and thread and sew the opening closed. So you take your time. To make yourself something nice for tea, so you can use your new placemat. What will you make? pay extra attention to your corners. I'm not going to make you sit through me fiddling for hours on the camera, but just do your best. Get nice corners. Okay, bit of rolling, bit of cajoling, and they'll work fine. You roll the seams. Sit better, can you see? Just sort of roll it. Sit better. Okay. You get the idea. There we are. So then you take your needle and your thread, you fold in these raw edges, and you have to be careful because this is patchwork, so I probably start with this facing me because you don't want to split these seams. You're just going to do 1/4 inch in, 1/4 inch in. Okay, and little stitches just to neaten that up a bit. Okay, we did this in the pin cushion, and you've probably done it in other projects as well. So little slip stitches, and then one final press, very, very lightly, because you don't really press things once you've got that sort of texture in them, so you don't want to flatten them, so you just want to make sure that the lining's sitting where you want it. And then that is pretty much it. So I'll do some hand sewing, and you can do some hand sewing, and then we'll admire the finished thing. Here you have it, one lovely placemat. Hope you've enjoyed making it. It's always fun to sew along with you. And all you have to do now is don't point out for your mistakes and ask, where's my dinner? Where's my dinner? Cheerio, crafty monkeys.